Ladies and gentlemen, we are entering March Madness, a roller coaster ride that never stops, meaning one day people will be screaming in joy because their teams have won, their bracket's perfect, and the other day people will be screaming because they're angry, their bracket's been shattered, the team's been kicked out of the tournament. And that being said, today the tournament bracket is actually getting released at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In the background here, I've got the Big Ten Championship between Michigan and Wisconsin. Michigan showing up again this year. Unsurprisingly. Last year they had a little bit of a down season. This year they've been defensive standouts in terms of getting the ball turned over. And the obvious favorite, not for the Big Ten title, but the NCAA title, I think is Duke. Duke proved the other day that they can win without Cooper Flagg on their side. And they did it by a blowout. They did it by at least 20 points. And that to me is indicative of an all-around team effort, sustained ball movement, and working without their best scorer and defender on their hands. I think next year, if Cooper Flagg returns, combining him with the Boozer twins, who are a dangerous offensive duo, would put Duke in the running for a back-to-back championship, but that's too early to talk about now. The other favorite, I'd say, is Florida. I just witnessed them brutally beat down my Alabama Crimson Tide yesterday, and today they beat Tennessee by 10-plus points. People keep talking about their offense, the fact that there's not, on Charlie's chalkboard today, spoiler alert, there's no Florida player in the top 10 in the NCAA. And that's because they're just an all-around good team. It reminds me a lot of that Spurs team, the beautiful game, where it's just consistent ball movement, always putting the team first above anything else. And really, really good hustle on the defensive side of the ball. I think if they win, they'll do it because of their dominant defense and all-around team effort as well. With Duke, they did prove they can win without Cooper Flagg. Although with Cooper Flagg, and I've noticed they've had the tendency to put the ball in his hands in every play, which isn't a bad thing because you want your best player to touch the ball. But because they did it so often, the rare losses were when they always gave Cooper Flagg the ball. I mean, I'm pretty sure he scored 42 points. That's the freshman record in the NCAA. Well, not record. That's the Blue Devils' most points scored in a game in the last few years by a freshman, 42 points. I don't know. If they go against Florida, they're going to have to spread the ball out like they've been doing now. But with Cooper Flagg on their side, they're in for it. They're definitely going to get it. And I'm also hearing a lot of Tennessee going out and winning the title, but today we watched them get squashed by Florida, unfortunately. And I personally was rooting for Alabama, the nation's top-ranked offense and top rebounders, great getting the ball. But unfortunately, they couldn't beat Tennessee. And I think Auburn's having they're getting crumbled. Well, they're getting their butts kicked. I mean, heck, they got beat by Tennessee. They got beat by Bama. They're on a little bit of a losing slump right now. I think they need to get it together for these playoffs. Janai Broom, come on, dude. Step up. All right. Now we're going to move on to Charlie's Chalkboard. All right, welcome to Charlie's Chalkboard, where I give you the rankings of coach, teams, and players, anything that you ask me to. All right, so first up, we're doing the top 10 NCAA basketball players. Number 10, I have Jakukians. And his best comparison is Austin Reeves. Jakukians, or however you pronounce his last name, plays for the Illinois, Fighting Illini. And I think he's a great scorer all around, great ball handles. I think definitely deserving of this top 10. Some would go after me for not putting Chaz Lanier, but I don't know. I don't think Chaz Lanier is a top 10 player. He's a good scorer for Tennessee. He's good for what they need, just not top 10 wise. All right, moving up to number 9, we have Zakai Zeigler for the Tennessee Volunteers. Zakai, to me, he reminds me a lot of Kyrie with his handles. Last year he got injured, and if he was there last year with Dalton Connect, I have a feeling they would have made maybe a Final Four run, but unfortunately they didn't. Zeigler has Kyrie-esque handles to me, maneuvering around defenders with his size, speed. I've watched him play in person against Texas. I think he did really good in that aspect. And then his basketball IQ, nobody talks about that much, but it reminds me a lot of Chris Paul because he passes the ball in places you wouldn't expect. From what I found, 47% of his targets all make their shot. That's pretty impressive if you ask me. I think that would be great for today's NBA, getting shooters, if he's still in the league, like Steph Curry open, the more modern shooters like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think that would be good for a team. I think he will be a great asset as a point guard, like a traditional point guard, if he joins the NBA. All right, next up we got Edgecombe from Baylor. Edgecombe is really fast underneath, and he has great decision-making when he's around the paint. I couldn't really find a good NBA comparison for him. I think he's one of a kind in that aspect. But as far as I've seen, he's really fast when he gets to the basket, always putting his head down, fearless, not afraid to get to the basket. You could say Ginobili-like, but he's missing the Euro step. But I think maybe first round NBA. Not too sure on that one. All right, next up we have Arizona's Ace Bailey. Rutgers Ace Bailey. Ace Bailey, my goodness, ladies and gentlemen. His ball handling, his scoring, his mid-range shooting, it reminds me so much of a young Kevin Durant. I'm not even kidding you. I'm not saying he's the next Kevin Durant, but his shot is so much like Durant, it's frightening. And I have a feeling once he gets the playmaking down, even more so, he's a top 10 pick for sure in the NBA. I know Rutgers isn't doing too good as a team this year, or from what I know, I could be wrong on that. But I think Ace Bailey he's going to make a big run in the NBA maybe. Who knows? Maybe not Rookie of the Year, but I think he's really good. All right, moving up to number 6, we have Arizona's Caleb Love. Caleb Love, I'm not going to use the term my goodness too much, but his explosiveness is ridiculous. It reminds me so much of Ja Morant and what he can do. You haven't seen him dunk too much, but he doesn't need to. It's college. You don't need to risk injuring yourself too much with a bunch of dunks consecutively. I mean, Ja even said that. Ja's trying to stay healthy this season for the Grizzlies by not dunking. So this kid's making the right choice in that. And he's also a good passer. But like I said, Ja Morant is this man's best NBA comparison. And for sure, he is going to help Arizona in the tournament. So watch out for him. All right, next up, number 5, Hunter Dickinson. Hunter Dickinson is a big man for the Kansas Jayhawks. Shout out Jack Cunningham. And he, in my opinion, is a lot like Kristaps Porzingis. He's a left-handed shooter, but he can shoot three-pointers as a big man. He's, I think, 7 foot exact. He's the team's leading rebounder and scorer. It's incredible what I've seen. And Kristaps Porzingis, in my opinion, he's the modern-day archetype for what you want a big man to be on a shooting team. Can always shoot whenever you need him to. Not going to go on a rant about him, but I'm saying that's just who Hunter Dickinson reminds me a lot of. And I know Kansas hasn't been too great this year, but hey, I think Hunter's a spectacular player. I think he'll do well in the NBA if he gets there. All right, moving up to number 4, Mark Sears. So Roll Tide, I'm a Bama fan, but I put him here over Hunter Dickinson with actual reason. He's Alabama's leading scorer. Alabama leads the nation in points per game. And he reminds me a lot of Jalen Brunson. Left-handed, really fast underneath the basket, can get you a couple layups. Incredible at shooting threes. Great in the clutch, as we saw against Auburn with that game-winning shot. And ever since, I feel like he's gotten overshadowed. Well, he was overshadowed his first year because obviously you had Brandon Miller there and Aaron Estrada helping lead the team into the Sweet 16, where they unfortunately lost to San Diego State. And ever since then, he's come out of left field, hurling up threes, being an insanely good point guard. And I think he should be a first-round pick in the NBA. And if anything, who knows? He could be an all-star. I don't know. All right, next up, we got the old R.J. Davis. I believe R.J. Davis has been in the NCAA basketball league for, 5 years now, so making him a super senior. And I obviously expect him to be in the top 5 somehow. I mean, you can't not put him there. His offensive skill set reminds me a lot of Drew Holiday, being able to shoot threes and a little fast. But, man, he may be a top 3 player in the NCAA right now, but I don't think he'll do that well in the NBA. That's just me. I think if you stay in college basketball past 3 years, there are a few exceptions to it. I mean, you got Tim Duncan who stayed for 4 years, and I don't know. I don't see R.J. Davis doing that well in the NBA. I'd see maybe, if you recall, Patty Mills. Patty Mills was a fast player for the San Antonio Spurs, always swooping around the place, doing whatever you needed him to do. Maybe he could do that, but otherwise I can't really see anything good coming out of that. All right, number 2. Can I get a drum roll, please? Janai Broome. Janai Broome, incredible transfer from Morehead State. Made a great decision going to Auburn. Obviously vaulted them back into national title contention. And I know this is going to be an odd comparison for him, but Janai Broome reminds me a lot of a left-handed LaMarcus Aldridge, because he always had those hooks. So did LaMarcus Aldridge. You could say Tim Duncan, but I think he's a little faster than what Tim Duncan was. I feel like he could win Naismith Player of the Year. And it's because Cooper Flagg was injured for that one Duke game in the ACC tournament, and they still won. I think he might get it over Cooper Flagg, maybe. I hope not. I want Cooper Flagg to get it as a freshman. That would be insane. But Broome has done most everything right this season. When his teams needed him the most, he stepped up. And the loss to Alabama on the game-winning shot by Sears, he scored 34 to keep him in the game. I mean, he's able to put the team on his back when he needs to, but he doesn't have to that often. That's the thing. He chooses not to. On defense, he also reminds me of LaMarcus Aldridge. Again, left-handed. But solid player. Definitely going to make it in the NBA, I'd hope. And good luck to him in the NCAA tournament. All right, number 1, Cooper Flagg. This one's kind of obvious. I feel like everybody have him as the best player. He is the best prospect in the past, 10 years now maybe? Could be wrong on that. Although I think Ant personally was a better one, and so is Zion. Hey, this guy's insane. And not trying to be racist here, but for a white guy, he's done insanely well in the NCAA. I mean, you get Chet Holmgren every once in a while. Yeah, I get that. You get Hunter Dickinson. But this guy, dude, as a freshman, he's been tearing it up, almost averaging 20 points a game. He ranks 9th in the NCAA in scoring. And defensively, he's a major asset to this Blue Devils team. And I think they're my favorites to win the title. I know they're number 1 anyway, but obvious favorites. That may be Houston with their defense. I don't know. I would like to see a Houston-Duke matchup. I feel like that would be an intense chess match. Cooper Flagg, to me, reminds me a lot of a young Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett was an explosive power forward, obviously Tim Duncan's rival, and he was great on defense. And I feel like that's what Cooper Flagg could be in the NBA. Young Kevin Garnett. And speaking of that, I think teams that most likely get him, I think the Nets are probably going to get him if he goes this year. If not, wait till next year. Maybe San Antonio will get him. I don't know. I think that would be pretty cool to watch. But Cooper Flagg, I think everybody can agree at this point, he's the best player in the NCAA tournament. Well, that we know of, locked right now. But he is definitely the best player. Obviously the favorite to win the Naismith, but I don't know, after that game where Duke would prove they could win without him, I don't really see it as much. I think it will go to Janai Broome. In my opinion, most talented player in the NCAA. All right, well, that's it for Charlie's Chalkboard. Now let's move on to Retro Rewatch. All right, so for Retro Rewatch, I picked one of my favorite Super Bowls, and the majority of you out there all know I'm a Chiefs fan, so let's get it over with. I chose the Chiefs versus Niners Super Bowl 54 back in 2020, February 2nd. So on this date, this year, we saw the first death of the coronavirus was reported. So yes, this was going into that COVID year where President Trump mandated that everybody stay at home, don't go to work. So this is going into that. This is like the last big normal event before that. And then some movies that came out were like Sonic, Tenet by Christopher Nolan, great movie, definitely recommend to watch, and the Disney Pixar movie Soul. All right, so here's a little background on both teams. The San Francisco 49ers this year, 2019-2020, had dominant season, 13-3 record, having the league's second-best offense to the Baltimore Ravens and fourth-best defense that finished top 5 in the 3 major defensive categories in terms of yards allowed. And they dominated the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship 37-20, and they had a 27-0 lead at halftime. And this is over Aaron Rodgers, a year before his, third MVP. Their offense was led by quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, who for about 4 years had been overshadowed by the great Tom Brady of the New England Patriots. His top pass catchers were George Kittle and the rookie Deebo Samuel. They also had at running back Raheem Mostert and Pro Bowl fullback Kyle Juszczyk. The team had an outstanding defensive line. If they had all these guys in their prime, I swear they would most likely have won the title. And their D linemen consisted of DeForest Buckner, who had 61 tackles and 7.5 sacks and 4 fumble recoveries. Eric Armstead, who had 54 tackles and 10 sacks. And Dee Ford, who they acquired from Kansas City, with 6.5 sacks in 12 games. And Defensive Rookie of the Year, Nick Bosa, 47 tackles, 9 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries. Their linebacker crew was led by Fred Warner, team leading 118 tackles, 3 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles, and Dre Greenlaw, 64 tackles and 1 sack. And their best cornerback was Richard Sherman, who went ahead and left his beloved Seattle Seahawks and the Legion of Boom to go join their NFC West rival. And he led the team in interceptions with 3, including a pick 6, earned his 5th career Pro Bowl selection, before adding 2 more interceptions in the playoffs. Now, their opponent, the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City had matched their previous year's record with 12-4, although they did not get the 1 seed this time because the Baltimore Ravens, who went 14-2, and Lamar Jackson, the unanimous MVP, had the 1 seed. They made the AFC Championship the prior year, the Chiefs did, but they lost in overtime to the New England Patriots, who went on to win the Super Bowl over the Rams. The Chiefs had the 4th-ranked offense with 28.4 points per game and came off of an AFC Championship win over the Titans, who had made it past that 14-2 Baltimore Ravens team and whooped them 28-12. And they beat the Titans 35-24 with a 60-yard touchdown to Sammy Watkins to seal the game. And prior to that, they had a divisional round matchup in which they were down 24-0 against the Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins. And they ended up scoring on 7 straight possessions and won 51-31. The Chiefs' offense was led by rising superstar at the time, Patrick Mahomes, who the previous season, 2018, had won MVP and Offensive Player of the Year while throwing for 5,097 yards and 50 touchdowns. Mahomes' top receiver was Pro Bowl tight end Travis Kelce, who had caught 97 passes and 229 yards and 5 touchdowns, making him the first NFL tight end to have 4 consecutive 1,000-yard receiving seasons and pass receptions. And he was 30 years old when he did this. His other targets included Tyreek Hill, who earned his 4th Pro Bowl selection despite missing 4 games, catching 58 passes for 860 yards and 7 touchdowns. Sammy Watkins was their second best receiver, and then Demarcus Robinson. And they had rookie Mecole Hardman, who was a special teams asset and an explosive playmaker. Their defensive line featured 2 Pro Bowl selections in Chris Jones and Frank Clark. Frank Clark had 8 sacks and 3 forced fumbles, and Chris Jones had 9 sacks. Their best defensive back was Tyrann Mathieu. In his first season with the Chiefs, he tallied 4 interceptions, 2 sacks, and 75 tackles, which was enough to earn him his 2nd career Associated Press first-team All-Pro selection as a defensive back. Here are the stakes for this game. If the Niners won this Super Bowl, they would have gotten their 6th Super Bowl ring as a franchise, which would have tied them for the Patriots and the Steelers for the most that a franchise has had all time. And it would be the first time since the 90s that they won a Super Bowl. The previous Super Bowl they went to was against the Baltimore Ravens in 2012, and they lost 34-31 and were down 28-6 at the half. For the Chiefs, this was their first Super Bowl appearance in 50 years. Something to marvel at. Their first since Len Dawson won their first against the Vikings. As a franchise, it was pretty high stakes for them. So to open up the game, the Chiefs' first scoring drive was Mahomes, who ran it in for a score despite having the ball knocked out of his hands by Richard Sherman beforehand. And he ran in to take the lead 7-0. Well, 7-3, sorry. The Niners had kicked a field goal the previous drive. And then they were able to get the ball again and kicked a field goal to make it 10-3. Drove down the field, averaging 10 yards a play, and Garoppolo passed it to Kyle Juszczyk to tie to the game 10-10 going into half. Now, the halftime show was notorious for featuring Jennifer Lopez and Shakira. Exiting half, the Niners began to force turnovers off the Chief, intercepting Mahomes off of drop passes from his receivers twice, and they were able to take a 20-10 lead with 3 minutes left to go in the third, and held it until 7 minutes left in the game. With 7 minutes left in the game, on a 3rd and 15, Mahomes threw a 44-yard pass to Tyreek Hill off of a play called Jet Chip Wasp to put them inside the Niners' 35-yard. And the Chiefs get to the goal line, and Mahomes connects with Kelsey for a touchdown to cut the lead 20-17. And the Chiefs force the Niners to punt, and Mahomes throws a 38-yard dart to Sammy Watkins, and Damian Williams catches the ball out of the backfield for the touchdown to take the lead 24-20. Now the Niners, with 1:33 left, drove down the field and were at the 50 until Garoppolo got sacked on 4th down. And then Damian Williams got the ball in a handoff and ran it 38 yards for the game-sealing touchdown. And Garoppolo threw an interception, and the Chiefs win the game 31-20, scoring 21 points in the final 7 minutes. Super Bowl MVP was Patrick Mahomes, although many say it should have been Damian Williams for that touchdown. And that was the conclusion of Super Bowl 54. So the name I gave this Super Bowl was Jet Chip Wasp, because that 44-yard pass to Hill was obviously the turning point in the game. Patrick Mahomes himself said it in the post-game interview. And for star power, I put 8.6. Really, some of the guys were young. Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa obviously became very big names in the NFL as of today. Deebo Samuel just got traded to the Commanders, and Nick Bosa is one of the highest paid non-quarterbacks in the NFL and defensive menace. And Garoppolo, fortunately, faded away after that year. He had the 1 year where he led the Niners to the NFC Championship against the Rams, but he blew it. Then Brock Purdy took over after him. Fred Warner was a superstar in his own right. Incredible stuff. Richard Sherman, obviously, with the legacy he left with the Legion of Boom in Seattle. And for Kansas City, looking at it now, that was one stacked Kansas City team. Because you had Patrick Mahomes, rising Patrick Mahomes, who hadn't reached his full potential yet. He still hasn't, in my opinion. And Travis Kelce in his physical prime, and Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins. Then on defense, Tyrann Mathieu was insane for years. So was Frank Clark and Chris Jones. So good stuff there. Now, for stakes, I put 9.2 because the Niners wanted to tie the Patriots and Steelers and get that ring. I feel like they really wanted that game, and they were going to win it too, but they ended up blowing it the last 7 minutes. And the Chiefs' first appearance in 50 years, they had to show something. Mahomes had to show that he could be up there with the greats. And that's why I gave it a 9.2. And for legacy, 8.8. Looking back at it, depending on where Mahomes goes from here, this could be one of the biggest and most defining games ever. As who knows, people took him out of the GOAT conversation as of recent. I personally think he's still in it until he retires. As long as he plays, Patrick Mahomes is still in that conversation. So this could be regarded as his first Super Bowl win, or the first Super Bowl win of the greatest quarterback of all time. Who knows? For rewatchability, I put 8.4. For most of the game, you saw a lot of defensive punts. Well, not defensive punts. Punts, defensive turnovers, until the last quarter where everything started getting insane. And so, yeah, 8.4. I think the halftime show was one of the peak parts about it. The overall score is an 8.8, which ranks first on our list, which we have 2 games so far. The other being White Makes It Right and Jet Chip Wasp. So if you want to tune in, go look on our Instagram from the Cheap Seats 15 and watch on my YouTube channel. I have a link there. And if you want to be in any episode, DM us on our Instagram channel. This is Charlie Jimenez from the Cheap Seats, signing off.